For centuries, Sector 938 had been a graveyard. Not a literal one, though a few ancient ships and broken moons floated like bones in its shadows, but a dead zone by design. The Galactic Concord had declared it off-limits during the height of its empire building, sealing it behind automated defense arrays and bureaucratic blacklists. To the public, Sector 938 was unstable, a region of natural hazards and cosmic radiation. In reality, it was where the Concord hid everything it didn't want anyone to find. The High Caste called it the Vault, a name whispered in political halls and military sanctums, never spoken over open comms. Within its boundaries were derelict war machines from extinct civilizations, forbidden technologies that defied Concord law, and artifacts excavated from ancient ruins that even the scholars feared to name. It was the Concord's shame closet, and its ace in the hole. But what made the vault truly dangerous wasn't just what was inside. It was the arrogance of those who believed it was safe. Outpost Virex floated at the edge of the sector, a monitoring station disguised as a refueling depot. It hosted no civilians, no press, just a rotating crew of specialists, scientists, and soldiers assigned to keep the secrets buried. Some had clearance. Most didn't. All of them knew better than to ask what was on the transports arriving under armed escort, or what pulsed behind the vault doors sealed in the station's lower levels. Lieutenant Saren Tell moved down the main corridor of Virex, boots echoing against the clean metal deck. The silence was routine. So was the boredom. On paper, this was one of the most important facilities in the galaxy. In practice, it was the most uneventful post in Concord service. "Telemetry checks out," said Ensign Drell from the operations console as Saren entered the command deck. No fluctuations, no unauthorized entries. Again. Saren gave him a dry smile. "You sound disappointed." "Just. It's been 5 months since anything even drifted into scan range. A micro-comet would be exciting at this point." He wasn't wrong. The vault had become myth even within the ranks, a place where careers plateaued and time dragged. But Saren didn't mind. Boredom meant safety. Then the lights dimmed. Not a full power failure, just a flicker, barely noticeable. But Saren had been stationed on enough ships to feel when something was off. She turned toward Drell, who was already frowning at the console. "Energy spike," he muttered. "Not internal. External. What the hell?" Before she could ask, the alarm klaxons wailed. Red lights bathed the room in pulsing flashes. Virex's defense grid spun online, targeting systems locked onto a new contact. Drell's fingers danced across the interface, trying to identify the intruder. Contact. Unknown class. Not Concord. Not anything in the database. The screen showed a black silhouette coasting into the sector at impossible speed. No visible engines, no heat signature. The ship seemed to glide. No, cut through the vacuum, like space itself was making way. Saren leaned over his shoulder. "Any response to hails?" Drell shook his head. "They're not responding. They're not even broadcasting. It's like they don't care if we see them." The ship slowed, stopped. Then a voice echoed across every open channel on the station. Calm. Measured. Human. "We remember." Saren froze. Her blood turned to ice. She turned to Drell, her voice barely a whisper. "Run a voice match." The computer processed it in seconds. The answer blinked back in red letters. "Origin. Earth. Status. Extinct." The screen went dark. Then Outpost Virex exploded. High Lord Jorik Val's talons clicked against the obsidian floor of the Concord's core chamber as he reviewed the report. The air smelled of scorched circuits and static. Around him, the other ruling species murmured in disbelief. No one spoke above a whisper. No one had to. The data said enough. Outpost Virex had ceased transmission 23 minutes ago. No warning. No distress call. Just a garbled burst of static, a cryptic voice recording, and then silence. They pulled the black box fragments from a long-range drone that had been observing from a stealth orbit. What they saw chilled every member of the Concord Council. An unmarked ship, no transponder, no heat trail, no warp wake, entered the outer zone of Sector 938. It ignored the station's hails. It cut through the station's shielding like it wasn't there. And in the final seconds, it transmitted one phrase in flawless Concord Standard dialect, spoken in a human voice. "We remember." Lord Jorik's beak clicked twice in reflex. He tapped the holopanel and expanded the frame-by-frame breakdown of the footage. The ship was like nothing he'd seen. Black, angular, with no visible engines or weapon ports. Its hull shimmered like liquid shadow, devouring light. And it moved too fast. Faster than anything should. The Concord's prime strategist, a crystalline being named Vethkal, finally broke the silence. "This vessel's energy signature bends light in a localized event field. That should be impossible." Jorik's eyes narrowed. And the voice. Vethkal paused. Analyzed. Verified. A different silence fell. Heavier now. "Human," Vethkal confirmed. Gasps echoed across the chamber. One member, a reptilian ambassador from the Merrick, hissed and slammed a claw on the table. "That species died out 500 cycles ago. Their systems were marked unstable, quarantined, abandoned. Their own wars destroyed them." "So we were told," Jorik growled. "Apparently, someone lied." Another image blinked onto the screen, this time from an automated satellite that had caught a distorted, split-second shot after the explosion at Virex. The ship was gone, but above the wreckage, a jagged rift in space lingered, a glowing wound in reality itself, pulsing with energy. "A tear," Vethkal said grimly. "They're not using jump gates. They're not using warp lanes. They're ripping through space." "Fiction," another member snapped. "No longer," Vethkal replied. "They didn't return with ships. They returned with technology, advanced beyond anything in our network." Jorik leaned back in his chair, mind racing. He remembered the old intelligence reports, classified files from a time when humans were still being washed. Primitive, volatile, fragile. And yet, they'd advanced at a rate the Concord couldn't explain. Always pushing boundaries, always chasing chaos. And then, silence. The entire Terran sector went dark. The Concord assumed they'd collapsed. It was convenient. Clean. So the High Council buried it. Apparently, the humans hadn't died. They'd gone dark, to evolve. "Get me the command fleet," Jorik ordered. "Send a recon squad to 938. Do not engage. I want data. Movement patterns. Everything." "And if they find more ships?" someone asked. Jorik's jaw clenched. "Then we pray," he said quietly, "that humans haven't come to finish what we started." The Concord didn't waste time. Within 2 hours of the Virex incident, a fleet of recon-class vessels, fast, quiet, heavily shielded, was dispatched to Sector 938 under the command of Fleet Marshal Norin Vex. He was a veteran of the Scourge rebellions, a cold strategist known for eliminating resistance without hesitation or drama. He wasn't rattled easily. But the briefing had left him uneasy. His orders were strict. Observe, analyze, and under no circumstances engage. Not until they knew what they were dealing with. That was before the screaming started. Contact. Rear quadrant. Multiple. Wait. They're splitting. The bridge of Vex's command cruiser, Sovereignthorn, erupted into a flurry of activity. His sensor officer flailed at her console. "Impossible object velocities. Evasive maneuvers engage. I don't know what we're looking at, sir." On the central display, dots representing their formation were blinking out one by one. No weapon trails. No incoming fire. Just gone. "Report." Vex barked. 12 ships lost. We haven't even seen them. Wait, patching in satellite feed now. The screen shifted, showing distant footage from an orbital surveillance drone hastily activated near one of the outer moons. And there they were. Ships. Human ships. But they weren't a fleet. They didn't move in formation or mirror each other's trajectories. Each vessel was different in shape, size, even propulsion. One looked like a twisted blade surrounded by orbiting drones. Another resembled a spinning ring of shifting glass. Some moved like insects, erratic and twitching, while others coasted as if gravity itself bent for them. Predators. All of them. Vex watched, silent, as one Concorde corvette turned to flee, and was instantly gutted mid-turn by something. He couldn't even tell what. The footage caught only a blur, then a sudden bloom of plasma. Then silence. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Zoom. There. Pause. The screen froze on a still frame. One of the human ships was close now, drifting past the wreckage of a Concorde scout. Its hull wasn't just dark. It absorbed the light around it. But etched across the side was a symbol. 2 vertical slashes flanking a single curved crescent, glowing faintly blue. His tactical officer shivered. "Sir, what language is that?" Vex didn't answer. He knew that symbol. It was old, predating warp travel, predating Concorde itself. It was Earth standard. From one of the last deep space Terran Black Ops programs, Phantom Wing, a human ghost fleet that was rumored to have vanished during the collapse. So they hadn't vanished. They'd gone dark. They'd hidden. And now, they hunted. "Why haven't they destroyed us yet?" one of the officers asked, voice cracking. "Because they're testing us," Vex thought. "Mapping our tactics. Measuring our fear." "Retreat," he ordered quietly. "All ships. Full subspace withdrawal." "But sir—" Now, his order rippled out. The surviving ships activated emergency warp drives, blinking out one by one, fleeing the sector. The Sovereign Thorn was last to leave, drifting for a moment longer as if watching for pursuit. None came. The human ships simply dispersed. No victory call, no pursuit. Just disappearance, like wolves returning to the forest. Back in the command deck, Vex stared at the still frozen frame of the curved symbol. This wasn't a rogue fleet. This was a return. A slow, deliberate re-entry into a galaxy that had buried their memory under layers of arrogance. He turned to his officers, voice low and certain. "We just got outmatched by ghosts," he said. "And ghosts don't forget." The Concorde High Council hadn't convened in full session in nearly a century. Now, every seat was filled. Holograms shimmered where physical attendance was impossible, but the tension in the air was real, thick and cloying, like the calm before an extinction event. On the central display hovered a single grainy image pulled from the Sovereign Thorn's last data burst before withdrawal. The symbol glowed in icy blue across a black hull, 2 vertical lines flanking a crescent. Simple, primitive, terrifying. Ambassador Vorthek, representing the Merrick sovereignty, clicked his mandibles in agitation. "This is ancient human glyphwork, centuries old. You told us the humans were eradicated. You told us they burned themselves out." "They did," Grand Archivist Relne insisted, her crystalline fingers splaying across the console. "Every report, every scan of their systems, dead. Cities overgrown. Orbitals shattered. AI husks. We confirmed it." "No," came the soft reply from the back of the chamber. "You confirmed what you wanted to see." All eyes turned to the speaker, High Minister Alix Varen, the last surviving official from the Terran Monitoring Initiative. He hadn't spoken publicly in decades. Most thought he was dead. Perhaps he had been, until the ghosts came knocking. Alix stepped forward and raised a hand, revealing a handheld projector. With a flick, he cast an old star map across the chamber, faded and cracked. Not current territory lines or trade zones. This was older. Pre-Concorde expansion. Pre-collapse. 5 centuries ago, the humans stopped transmitting. Before that, they were running black site research in deep void sectors, beyond regulated space, off the charts. This is one of the last maps we intercepted before they went dark. The room went still. Lines webbed across the starfield. Connecting systems never claimed, never settled. Arcs and curves drawn not by political ambition, but purpose. A spiral pattern that circled around one final, blinking system in the center. Sector 938. The vault, someone whispered. They weren't running, Alex said. They were rebuilding. Rerouting everything into a sector we thought was dead. We left them alone long enough. And they did what humans always do. Adapt, Relna whispered. No, Alex corrected. Change. They don't adapt like we do. They discard what doesn't work. They burn the map and draw a new one. They saw the Concord coming and made themselves into something else. He paused, letting the silence settle before speaking again. Something worse. There was a pause, then a chime. Vethkal, the crystalline strategist, spoke up from the chamber's edge. We just finished decrypting the final burst from Virex's black box. It included an audio log from the last technician on duty. She triggered a fail-safe backup feed before the explosion. He tapped a command. Static played. Then a woman's voice, human, strained with panic. They're here. They're not just attacking. They're studying us. We tried to lock them out of the vault's core files, but they bypassed encryption like it was. Silence. Then another voice, clear, steady. Not hers. Male. Human. No one buries us and walks away. The file cut off. No one in the chamber moved. Even the air seemed afraid to stir. High Lord Jorek stood slowly. His claws trembled as he spoke. Ready the primary fleets. Not recon. Full deployment. This isn't a border breach. It's a return. And what? Vorthek asked. Voice hoarse. Do you propose we do when they come for what we buried? Jorek's eyes never left the map. We give them a war they can't walk away from. Alex closed his eyes. Then you haven't learned a thing. The Armada launched at dawn, though in space, such things were symbolic at best. 300 Concord warships, flagships, dreadnoughts, gravity hammers, phase cruisers, swarm fleets, an entire wall of civilization's might, spearheaded by the hallowed fire, the largest vessel ever constructed. At its head, High Lord Jorek Val stood on the observation deck, eyes fixed on the swirling void ahead. They weren't hunting rebels or pirates this time. They were going to confront history. Inside the war room, holograms flickered through tactical projections. Strategists rotated through scans of Sector 938. Despite the chaos at Virex, the vault's core structures were intact. The humans hadn't destroyed them. They had accessed them, which meant they want something, said Vethkal, arms folded behind his translucent back. Not revenge, not chaos, something else. Data, Jorek said. Something we took, something we hid. And if we don't know what it was? Vethkal asked. Jorek didn't answer. No one did. On the outer rim of 938, the Concord Armada reached formation. Layers of shielding snapped into place. Fighters swarmed from launch bays like gnats with teeth. Artificial intelligence nodes pre-calculated thousands of engagement scenarios. Still, the humans didn't come. Not at first. They waited. And when they arrived, they did so with elegance that felt like mockery. At 4:17 hours, a single rift opened in the center of the formation. Not a gate, not a jump point. A tier. Space unfolded with surgical precision, and from that wound slipped 3 ships. Just 3. They were silent. No transponders, no fleet markers. They simply drifted forward, as if weightless and uncaring. Hold position, Jorek ordered. No firing until we understand their intent. Sensors reached out, bouncing off shifting hulls. The human ships didn't resemble any pattern. One was spherical and glowed faintly like a dying star. One was all jagged wings and impossible geometry. The third was simply blank, A stealth shell, reflecting nothing, existing like a hole in the universe. And still, they came closer. Then one of the Concord warships, Vigilant Wrath, fired. No order, no authorization. A reflex, perhaps. Fear, pride. It didn't matter. The beam lanced through space and struck the leading human vessel dead center. Except it didn't. It vanished the moment it touched the hull. Absorbed, redirected, or ignored. No explosion, no damage, no reaction. But something else reacted. The third ship, the blank one, pivoted. No engine flare, no maneuver thrusters. It just changed direction. Smoothly, casually. And then it spoke. Not through comms. Through everything. The words vibrated through shielding, bounced off hulls, burrowed into skulls. The voice wasn't loud. It was quiet. Calm. Cold. You fired first. And then hell followed. The stealth ship split into fragments, 12 pieces that moved with hive precision, each faster than Concorde sensors could track. Within seconds, 5 Concorde ships blinked out of existence. Not exploded, not shattered. Gone. Jorek gripped the rail as emergency alarms screamed. Return fire. Full barrage. Space ignited. Missiles, beams, and gravity pulses flooded the void. The other 2 human ships responded, not with defense, but dance. One slid through attacks like it anticipated them seconds before they launched. The spherical ship spun, and time bent around it. Concorde shots spiraling away like water down a drain. The hallowed fire's forward batteries locked on. Fire all sectors. But before they could, every screen went black. Not damage, overwritten. A symbol replaced all targeting data. The same human glyph, twin lines, and a crescent. Then a message. You buried the war. We became it. And the signal cut. Back on the observation deck, Jorek stared at the unfolding carnage, the sky itself burning with the fury of humanity reborn. He whispered, not to anyone else, but to himself. What did we do to them? The battlefield was quiet now. Not in the peaceful sense. In the after sense. Wreckage drifted where proud ships once stood. Dreadnoughts split open like cracked bones. Fires flickered inside sealed hulls, oxygen bleeding into the void. Of the 300 Concorde vessels that had entered Sector 938, fewer than 40 remained. And still, the humans hadn't deployed a full fleet. Just 3 ships. On the bridge of the hallowed fire, High Lord Jorek stood amidst the wreckage of his command crew. The central console was shattered, sparks cascading like electric rain. Blood, his own and others, dripped from a cut across his brow. Systems were offline. Comms dead. External sensors barely functioning. But the screens, those were active. The symbol remained. Not a threat. Not a demand. Just a reminder. We became it. He staggered toward the main display, gripping the support beam with shaking claws. The surviving crew stared at him, eyes wide with the question no one dared to speak. What had the Concorde done? And then, as if summoned by thought, a voice crackled through the emergency audio channel. No encryption, no translation needed. It was human. Female. Calm. Precise. High Lord Jorek Val, we have accessed your memory logs. Your species' collective record is incomplete. Redacted. Sanitized. Jorek tried to speak, but the channel ignored him. This was no conversation. It was a reckoning. You remember the final uprising. You remember burning Earth's last colonies, the bioplague sterilization of Titan, the orbital scouring of Mars. You called it necessary containment. Jorek's breath caught. That war, yes, he had read of it, been trained on it, but the records were vague. Sanitized, human rebellion, strategic suppression, a footnote in history. The voice continued. But you do not remember the children taken to Concorde laboratories, the deep cell experiments in time-space folding, The weaponization of psionic potential. You do not remember, because you buried it. Buried us. Another voice joined. Male this time. Older. Fierce. We didn't die. You taught us how to disappear. You taught us what fear looks like. And we became it. Outside, the surviving human ships drifted in loose orbit. They made no move to attack again. They didn't have to. They were waiting. On the far edge of the sector, something shimmered. A ripple in space. Then another. And another. The Concorde survivors watched, paralyzed, as tear after tear opened in the fabric of the void. Hundreds. Thousands. No jump trails. No warp gates. Just holes, ripped open like paper by a child's hand. Ships began to emerge. Some small. Some impossibly large. All human. None bore insignia. None signaled intent. But their silence was a declaration louder than any weapon. Jorik collapsed into his command seat. This isn't possible, he muttered. The AI core, running in barebones mode, flickered to life. Query, it said weakly. Shall I open classified Terran archive? Omega Protocol. He stared at it. That file had been sealed for over 500 cycles, locked by genetic encryption. Considered myth even by the strategists. Yes, he rasped. Override. Authorization. Jorik Val 79. The screen pulsed. A file opened. Text scrolled across. Omegae Protocetol. If Terran experimental populations reach phase Omega, immediate termination is impossible. Avoid contact. Avoid detection. Do not engage. They are no longer human. Jorik felt the final piece slide into place like a dagger in the dark. The Concorde hadn't just buried a war. They had created a monster, molded it in secrecy, and then lost control. He looked out at the growing storm, thousands of human ships aligning silently around the remnants of the Concorde fleet. A message blinked onto the screen. You buried your sins. We became your shadow. Now we bring the light. Sector 938 was no longer a battlefield. It was a monument. The dead ships drifted silently, watched by an audience of ghosts. Thousands of human vessels encircled the ruins of the Concorde's once proud fleet. They did not advance. They did not demand. They simply existed, like statues carved from a nightmare. From the bridge of the hallowed fire, Jorik could do nothing but watch. Every attempt to re-establish long-range comms failed. Every distress beacon was overridden. The human network, the one they weren't supposed to have, had swallowed all signals, turning Concorde systems into puppets dancing on invisible strings. And then, the message came. Not through the speakers, not through the screens. Through light. A projection lit the space around them. A 3D map of the galaxy, rendered in burning white and cold blue. Concorde space pulsed red. Former human systems glowed amber. And in the center, Sector 938 blazed like a star-going supernova. Lines webbed out from it. Paths. Highways. A hidden infrastructure that had existed beneath the Concorde's own map for centuries. They hadn't noticed because they never looked beneath their own reflection. They were building this the entire time, whispered Jorik's chief navigator, voice hoarse. Then the projection shifted, zooming into a new structure near the vault. It wasn't a station. It was a transmitter. One the size of a moon, cloaked in gravity distortion fields, now fully active. What is that? Someone asked. Jorik didn't answer, because he already knew. It's a beacon, he said. They're calling someone. The realization settled over the bridge like frost. The human ships were still watching, still silent. But now, it wasn't just Concorde eyes on the sector. Something else had turned to look. In the deepest layers of the Concorde archives, there were legends. Theories dismissed as myth. Fringe science about quantum imprinting and information storage beyond time. About what could happen if a civilization truly let go of biology. about what might emerge from the other side of extinction. Humanity, it seemed, hadn't gone extinct. They had stepped off the map. The projection changed again. This time, it showed images, flashes of memories no Concord historian had ever seen. Children behind energy glass, eyes glowing faintly. Soldiers locked in stasis tanks, injected with neural fluids developed from alien biotech. A technician, clearly Concord, removing a data shard from the skull of a barely conscious human teen. And finally, a chamber. Massive, glowing, filled with the same symbol. 2 slashes and a crescent. This wasn't just a rebellion. This wasn't even war. It was a return. And a trial. Jork stumbled back as the projection faded. His mind raced. His ancestors had ordered the experimentation. His government had sealed the records. And now, their mistakes stood at his doorstep. No longer angry children, but evolved predators. And yet, no shot had been fired in hours. A screen flickered back to life. A single message appeared, in clean, sharp Earth standard. You have 1 cycle to evacuate all Concord military presence from former Terran systems. Civilian vessels will not be harmed. Refuse, and we finish what you started. A second message appeared beneath it. Your sins don't grant you fear. They grant us permission. Jork slumped into his command chair, heart thundering. Permission. That's what this was. The Concord had lost moral ground long ago. Now the humans were offering the galaxy a chance to see it, to choose sides. And what frightened him most was this. They weren't demanding vengeance. They were offering justice. Jorik's gaze never left the final message. The hum of the bridge, once filled with panic and orders, now felt oppressive. The surviving crew members had gone silent, as if they too knew the gravity of what was coming. No one moved. No one spoke. The entire crew was waiting for something they didn't understand but feared with every fiber of their being. Outside the hallowed fire, the human fleet remained a haunting silhouette, still and patient, like a predatory animal awaiting the perfect moment to strike. The transmission didn't stop. It repeated with eerie calmness. You have 1 cycle to evacuate all Concord military presence from former Terran systems. Civilian vessels will not be harmed. Jork rubbed his eyes, the weight of 1,000 years of history pressing down on him. We cannot comply, Vethkal said, his voice steady despite the desperation that hung in the air. Not if we want to survive. They're offering us a choice, but they've already decided the outcome. They'll wipe us out. Not yet, Jork said, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. He hadn't fully realized it until now, but the humans hadn't just come for revenge. They were offering an ultimatum, a chance to leave, to redeem themselves, a chance to walk away, or to face the consequences. Jorik's mind raced. The Concord wasn't built to retreat. They never retreated. They overpowered. They conquered. Their entire civilization was built on the assumption that they could erase their past, bury their sins, and force everyone else to forget. But these humans, they didn't want to forget. They wanted the truth to be known. You will comply, the voice returned, its calmness still unnerving, or we will finish what you began. The projection blinked out. No more words, just silence. Jork turned to his crew, his once immovable presence now fractured by fear and doubt. What do we do? He asked quietly, his voice almost pleading. The answer came from the AI core, weak but resolute. There is no longer any choice. They've rewritten the rules of engagement. If we stay, we face extinction. A cold chill swept through the command deck. They were no longer the masters of the galaxy. They were the invaders, the trespassers, and the humans had already decided what to do with them. Evacuate, Jork ordered, his voice gaining strength. Get the civilians out. Move the fleet to the outer sectors. Everyone else, prepare to make a stand. But no one moved. And then, from the corner of the bridge, a voice rose. We've been running for centuries, hiding from our past, Vethkal said, his normally emotionless voice breaking. "We've buried what we've done and pretended it wasn't our fault. But it is. And now the humans are here to make us face the truth. If we abandon the fight, we admit to everything we did." Jork turned toward him slowly. "Do you think we can win?" he asked. Vethkal didn't hesitate. "No, but maybe we should stop trying to hide." The truth hung heavy in the air. The Concord could no longer pretend they had the right to dominate. The humans had returned, not as conquerors, but as judges. They were going to make the galaxy face what had been done, to force accountability on the Concord's shoulders. Jork's heart raced, but the decision became clear. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to be human, to face the past, to atone. And then the light returned. Another projection, brighter, sharper than before. "We do not seek your destruction. We seek your redemption." Jork stood. "Prepare to stand down," he said, voice shaking but determined. "We surrender. We will face what we did." The human ships did not advance. The destruction was not final, but the message was clear. The Concord had lost its place in the stars. It had no more power to control. The time for silence had passed. The time for reckoning had come. Jork turned toward the view screen, his eyes no longer filled with defiance, but something else, something the humans had already known for far too long. Fear. And for the first time in the history of the Concord, they would feel it.